It's a Jesuit and a diocesan priest, and they're playing golf on the moon.
Oh, wait, no, we can't tell that one. Sorry.
Swiggy, here's today's question. What is the difference between a Jesuit priest and a diocesan priest? Well, yeah, I know we're all regular priests, but people really do think there's a difference.
The main difference is in the type of calling.
Whoa, if we're going to list differences, I definitely want to do a disclaimer because there is a ton of overlap between Jesuit and diocesan priests. And it's not like there's just like one ideal model. Moving on. It's a generalization. Your mileage may vary. Take it for what it's worth. I look forward to hearing your letters.
As I was saying, different callings. See, Jesuits are primarily a missionary order, which means we can go wherever our superior sends us.
Like space!
No! What are you, like 10? No one's gonna get that reference.
It's a good book. Look it up on Amazon. It's a good book.
So, we go wherever we're sent, locally or globally.
Join the Jesuits. See the world.
As I was saying, as missionaries, we're never tied to one specific parish or diocese, something which is more common for our diocesan brothers.
And then there's community life. We live in communities with a bunch of other Jesuits who are working in various jobs in particular places or cities. We've got guys that are doctors, lawyers, engineers, professors, actors, and mimes.
Seriously?
Not kidding.
Yeah, but we're also playwrights and scientists and teachers, social workers, counselors, chaplains, you name it, we've been there.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a new job for us. Oh yeah, thanks Iggy. The vows. Poverty, chastity, and obedience.
It can get complicated because we take vows and diocesans make promises to live similarly. But if you boil it all down, diocesan priests can own property, whereas religious, by virtue of our vow of poverty, own nothing and rely on the support of the communities.
Hi, I'm Father Eric Sundrup, and I'm here with Father Patrick Gilger from America Media, and you are watching Jesuit Autocomplete.
Leo, are my hand gestures okay?
You're perfect. We're just going to keep you in the studio.
Okay.
You keep looking at the camera. It's all...
We are talking about Jesuits. Well, that sounds a little self-serving.
I don't know. Like the last one we had one. What does Pope Francis think about? And I was not nervous about that one. I should have been.
Yes.
I'm nervous about this one.
I'm not nervous about this.
All right, go.
Maybe I will be after I peel this off. Jesuits. Hey, come on now. That's not even fair. Are Jesuits Catholic? Yes. Yes, we are definitely Catholic.
I was on a retreat once. We had actually sand somewhere, and I just drew this circle. I said, "This is Catholic," and I said, "And inside this circle is Jesuit." And memorize this, and never forget this again.
No, very proudly, we are very proudly Catholic. Our name Jesuits comes from the Society of Jesus, and we are a religious order within the Roman Catholic Church under the leadership explicitly of the Pope. So yes, we are part of the Catholic Church.
That would be Catholic.
Yeah. Okay, that wasn't so bad of a start. Jesuits. Are Jesuits communists?
These are the same questions that they asked about the Pope. You'd think the Pope was a Jesuit or something. That would be very difficult.
Yes, it would be very difficult. No, Jesuits are not communists. Yes, we do explicitly care about and serve the poor. And in fact, we have really strong opinions about the way we should live together in community. So communist, the word community is right in there. So we want to think about how we live together in community in equal and intentional ways.
Maybe like the fact that I don't have a salary and I give all my salary to the community, then it's doled out to me, each proportion to their need.
That's exactly right. But look, all religious orders are communist in that sense. That does not mean that we are in any way Marxist or atheist or anything like this. We care about the poor.
Not a big fan of the opiate of the people phrase. No, don't like that.
We can do better.
No, and our own internal governance in the Society of Jesus is in no way, it doesn't work like that at all.
No, we're explicitly hierarchical, in fact. We live a vow of obedience, yeah. I'm only here because Eric made me.
I'm not in charge of you. Praise be to God.
Okay, that's enough. Jesuits. Are Jesuits celibate?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah, we're definitely celibate. So we take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience at the end of our novitiate. So after 2 years, we take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And chastity is the way that we live our celibacy. So we have celibate chastity. And what we want to do is, what we promise, celibacy means we will not be married, we will not engage in any kind of sexual activity. What chastity means is that our hearts are in that individual way, separate from a partnership, oriented specifically towards God.
What was the joke? We always say celibacy is difficult early on in your 20s, and then obedience becomes the problem. As you get older.
Well, we should say something about that. That might actually be helpful. So, I mean, the question, are Jesuits celibate? Like, that's a real question in and of itself. But I think even the more interesting one is like, what is celibacy like, or is it challenging? And the also,
yes,
that's right. Like, yeah, it's very challenging, because I know for me, like,
but married life is challenging. Single life is challenging. I think this comes. I mean, I don't know married life or single life. Single life maybe for a little bit, but all of these calls to live out a life of love and availability to other people, and how you're going to work that out specifically, that is difficult. We live in a culture it's really going to push you to let it be about you, and it's also going to push you to objectification of other people.
Yes.
And to resist that, and to find communities that can support that, and to deal with all the challenges and temptations that is complicated. And we talk about this a lot in community, because we need to support each other in living those vows out.
Jesuits
believe. What do Jesuits believe?
I believe that the Milwaukee Brewers are going to win the NL Central.
No, got to have faith in something. There's a very common joke. If you've met one Jesuit, you've met one Jesuit. Or if you're in a room with 5 Jesuits, then there are 15 opinions in the room.
Yeah, most of them are mine.
Well, I think the question, what do Jesuits believe, is frequently asked, is this in line with what the Catholic Church teaches? Is this in line with Catholicism and the teachings and beliefs of Catholicism? And yes, they would be, because the Jesuits, let's go back to the beginning, that big circle that we drew, where Catholic is the largest circle and Jesuits inside that. So yeah, those align. But Jesuits are also sometimes very high profile, work in a lot of universities, so you'll get them on topics where there can be a difference of opinion within the church, pushing one idea or a new way of looking at something, and some people might disagree with them, and so there might be arguments and valid stuff. I think that's great. I think that's Jesuits probably also relish those types of discussions.
Yeah, that's probably fair. What do Jesuits believe? It's a complicated question in a lot of ways. A lot of us have expertise in particular areas. I'm a doctoral student in the sociology of religion, so I think and believe a lot of particular things about this subfield of sociology that I spend a lot of my time focusing on. But in terms of religious beliefs, I believe what the church believes, and do my best really to think through that.
So I'm going to give a caution here. If you should type in, what do Jesuits believe, I vote against clicking on I'm feeling lucky. God knows what that would be. You think you should look at the entire list of the responses, right?
Okay, I do want to look at that entire list, and I want to look at this entire list. Jesuits, what do Jesuits do?
A lot of things.
We sit around on Tuesday afternoons and make YouTube channel videos.
That's one of the things we do. I know Jesuits that have PhDs in math. I know Jesuits that are getting PhDs in whatever it is you're getting a PhD in. Sociology. I know Jesuits that work in magazines. I know Jesuits that teach high school. I know Jesuits that run soup kitchens. They're all over the place. I know the Jesuit who's an astronomer.
Work with gangs.
Work with gangs. You name it. If it's possible to show people that they are loved and cherished, then the Jesuits probably find a way to make that work as something that we do. A lot of us get involved in education. In the United States, we're known for our educational institutions, for high schools and universities, but that's not the fullness of everything that goes on. That question, again, I'm cautioning against the I'm feeling lucky button on this. You need to look at the entire list. Jesuits do a whole number of things. Another thing, I just thought of this. You got 2 priests here. Not all Jesuits are priests.
True.
We have Jesuit brothers, so not all Jesuits are even celebrating Mass and the sacraments. You have Jesuit brothers who have a different, distinct vocation within the Society of Jesus. They're still fully Jesuits, but they're not working in sacramental ministry. So they're not saying Mass. They're not doing weddings and funerals and all sort of the parish type work. But they give their lives and their service in a different way, and they're more available for other things because they're not required to do all that sacramental ministry. So yeah, it's quite a diverse group.
Yeah. We could spend a long time making a list of the things that Jesuits
Which
do.
our lovely editors would cut.
We could spend a long time making a list like that of everything that Jesuits do. But the real answer, I think, for myself is, what do Jesuits do? We do whatever God asks us to do. Each of us in our own particular and unique
That's who I'm
ways.
supposed to be listening to.
Yeah, you actually do a good job of that. Stop it. No, we do whatever the Lord asks us to do. Now, to do that, we have to pay attention to the deep desires of our hearts, that idea of discernment that we talked about before. But we really follow wherever that leads, which is why we end up doing all kinds of things.
What we do as Catholics, as celibate Catholics, who believe and who are pretty much not communists.
Hi, my name is Alan Lamont. This message is about the emperors of the Roman Empire, imperial popes. You have to forget the whole cover of Christianity, this whole facade of the Vatican being a Christian church. You have to forget that, okay? And realize that they are crowned emperors. Right. In 1314 AD, Pope Sylvester was crowned by Emperor Constantine. Now at the time, Sylvester was just a Bishop of Rome. Catholics refer to him today as Pope Sylvester. The Roman Emperor wanted to promote Christianity, and the Pope wanted to have favour with the Roman Emperors instead of being persecuted. This alliance between the Pope and the Emperor created the Roman Catholic Church. Constantine gave Bishop Sylvester a beautiful palace, a magnificent cathedral with 7 altars made of gold. Instead of being a humble bishop, Sylvester became a pope. He lived in a Roman palace with wealth and power and the favour of the emperor. Now, the churchmen wore purple robes. Now, you know, when you read Revelation chapter 17, it identifies the woman that sits upon the scarlet coloured beast. It says that she is Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, but identifies her by saying that she is arrayed in purple and scarlet. Now I know also the Bible says that she's seated upon 7 hills, and Rome has always been known as the city on 7 hills, but really more than anything, the whole purple and scarlet is a giveaway. That is a clear sign. That's a clear signal, unmistakable sign that the Vatican, with the colour of cardinals, purple and scarlet, is Babylon the Great. That's it, you know, there's no disputing that. But where did that come from? Right, the colours of purple, the purple robes worn by cardinals, actually reflects the purple of Constantine's court, which was purple. Now this was an outward change. The most important change was an internal change. Now, the internal structure of the church took on the form of a practice of pomp, you know. It became imperial. It became, you know, royal. They became emperors. The bishops of Rome became emperors of the Roman Empire. Popes dressed and acted like Roman emperors, you know. They became emperors. As I said when I started this, you have to forget this whole cover of Christianity regarding the Vatican. The bishops of Rome became popes, and they lived in luxury and ruled over church and state. Now that's important to understand. Now the imperial papacy reached its peak during the Middle Ages. Popes were rich and powerful, and they ruled over kings and emperors. This is not the church that Jesus Christ founded. This is not the church of Jesus Christ. And, you know, Pope Gregory declared that the Pope has the right to depose kings and emperors, to make laws. And we see the same thing today in oaths like the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, and even the Jesuit order. They have the right to depose of heretical kings and heretics. They can kill them, strangle them, poison them, kill them with a leaden bullet. You know, the whole theology of the Vatican is that you can actually justify killing somebody, you know, because they won't submit to the Pope, who actually is the monarch of the world. He's the King of Kings. So really, what we're talking about here is you know, a dynasty of imperial popes, and Pope Innocent III reigned from 1198 to 1216. He called himself the ruler of the world. He wore a gold crown covered with jewels. What does the Bible say in Revelation? That this woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, decked with gold and precious jewels and precious stones. And also, Pope Innocent sat upon a purple throne. His clothes were sparked with gold and jewels. His horse was covered with scarlet. Kings and churchmen kissed his foot. Think about that. Now, the Inquisition persecuted people who disagreed with the Pope. And Pope Innocent became the most powerful man in the world. He did. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole history of the popes. I'm just going to explain really that purple, that colour is extremely expensive. The purple dye used, and the colour was a symbol of wealth and power. That's what it is. It's a symbol of power. Purple was worn by Roman emperors before the bishops of Rome, before even the birth of Jesus Christ, before the early church, before there was a bishop of Rome, before the beginning of Christianity. The emperors, the Caesars of Rome, were arrayed in purple. That is the symbol of power for the Roman Empire. Also, during the Middle Ages, wealthy popes used gems and purple stones in papal architecture. Now, Pope Paul II reigned from 1464 to 1471, and he enjoyed a luxurious life. He had a tiara of gold. Now, the tiara is the actual crown of the popes, and there's three to them. Okay, there's three to the tiara. And if you look in history, Babylon, the kings of Babylon had a triple crown tiara. It's actually a Babylonian crown, really. And you know, it really became a revived pagan empire. They revived the pagan gods of Rome and Babylon, of ancient Rome, and also, you know, the Pope, who was Pope Paul II, he dressed these cardinals in purple. You know, it became Roman law for them to be dressed in scarlet. Now, the triple crown really is Babylonian, as I've said, covered with jewels. And the Pope is an absolute monarch in the Vatican. He's a king. He's a king. That's why the Vatican was desperate to sign a concordat with Mussolini to restore the temporal power of the Pope. Because the Pope is a king over his kingdom, his Roman kingdom, which is Italy, governed from the Vatican City State. He has his own ambassadors, he has his own bank, he has his own government, really. And you've got to realise that. Forget this cover of Christianity. Forget it, it's a facade. You know? The Pope is the absolute monarch of the Vatican. He sits upon his ornate throne, and also his cardinals. What are they called? Princes of the church. This is not a Christian church. This is an empire. They are citizens of the Vatican, and popes, cardinals and bishops wear gold and jewels. They wear rings and crosses. The Pope has a special ring known as the Ring of the Fisherman. Okay? He also has magnificent pontifical rings that he wears on special occasions. Now, cardinals have rings of sapphire and gold. Yeah? It's all just, you know, it's not Christianity. That's obvious to anyone with a brain, you know, looking at the Vatican. It's an empire. And the popes of Rome are Caesars of that Roman Empire. And they demand that all kings of the earth, all governments, submit to their authority. That the king is, in fact, the king of kings. And he is the ruler of the world. He has temporal power over the earth. Right. Okay, Pope Pius, I'm going to end with this, reigned from 1939 to 1958. When Vatican officials came into his presence, they had to kneel while speaking with him and leave the room walking backwards. honestly. It's ridiculous, right? And when he telephoned Vatican officials, they had to drop to their knees with the phone in their hand. Honestly, it's outrageous. You know, when you read the history of the Vatican, when you actually look at the Vatican and you look at the structure of the popes and the cardinals and the archbishops and you know, the priesthood, it's absolute dictatorship. The Pope completely rules and dominates the whole of the Catholic Church. I mean, it's outrageous. Pope Pius, you know, if he telephoned a Vatican official, like I've just said, they had to drop to their knees with a phone in their hand and remain kneeling while he spoke to them. Now this was going on in 1958, you know. The Pope has a huge, luxurious palace. The Pontifical Palace, the Sistine Chapel and St. Peter's Basilica are filled with priceless paintings and statues worth millions. The architecture is rich, and the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel was painted by Michelangelo. In addition, there are 22 Vatican museums that are full of art treasures, worth billions. And okay, I'll end it here, but you can see clearly there that, you know, this is an empire. This is a Roman Empire. The popes of Rome are not bishops of a church. They are kings of a kingdom that, you know, rules over the kings of the earth. And forget this whole cover of Christianity. It's a lie. It's deception, you know. The popes really are Babylonian kings of a Babylonian Roman Empire. And that's the truth. They're not men of God, you know. And we have to realise that the popes are kings. And just accept that reality. That this is an abomination to God. It's not a Christian church. They are imperial popes. They rule the Catholic Church, and their cardinals rule over the kings of the earth. This is the truth. And, you know, the Catholic Church, the Vatican Bank, rules all banks. They're far more powerful than the Rothschilds or any banking dynasty, you know. They're nothing compared to the Vatican. The Vatican controls the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, and every banking organisation on this planet. They are the most wealthy organisation on this planet. And also, I don't want to get into that message, so I'll just end this by saying, if you're a Catholic, you need to understand that the Catholic Church is the Roman Empire. It never ended. Never ended with the Caesars. No, it continued through the bishops of Rome, who became Caesars of the Holy Roman Empire. Actually, unholy Roman Empire. Okay, thanks for listening.
This man controls the entire world. Many people know about the Pope, but what if he's not the only Pope? Rumor has it that there are 3 popes in existence. The White Pope, which everyone knows, the Black Pope, and the Grey Pope, each trumping each other in terms of power. The White Pope is the leader of the Vatican Church, and the Black Pope is the leader of the Society of Jesuits. However, when it comes to the Grey Pope, it is a whole different story. Well, you'll see. The Grey Pope, or more commonly known as Pepe Orsini, is the latest heir from a long bloodline of black nobility that are the movers and shakers behind world control, with their dynasty going way back to even Babylonian times. Today, they are the world's most powerful family, heading the Illuminati, with even the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers reporting to them, but not many people know that.
From wealthy families, oligarchic families of Genoa and Venice in Italy. And in the 12th century, they held the privileged trading rights, which means monopolies. It's a secret shadow hierarchy. The one at the top, what is called the papal bloodlines. The Black Pope is the one controlling the biggest intelligence agency in the world. They belong to the Jesuit order. What is called the black nobility families are the royal families across the world, mainly in Europe. The one who is the most powerful, which the Windsors are connected to, is Guelph. JFK was from such a family, but apparently he misled the cabal, and that's why, unfortunately, he was assassinated. The black nobility founded the Club of Rome, the Council on Foreign Relations, They appoint the presidents and the prime ministers worldwide, as well as having immense influence over the finances, over every aspect of our life.
The Queen's visible billions are but a tiny fraction of her invisible wealth accumulated through the black nobility. What is the black nobility? The black nobility is a wealthy aristocracy of elite ruling families who solidified their power in the 12th century by intermarrying with the wealthy godfather families of Venice, Italy. During the bloodbaths of the Christian Crusades, this brutal Italian oligarchy captured the trading monopolies. Over the centuries, the black nobility have used their power and wealth to rape, plunder, and exploit every corner of the globe. Dr. John Coleman's book, The Committee of 300, describes the history of assassinations, kidnappings, robbery, rape, blackmail, coercion, and terror committed by these inbred families on a grand scale. Today, they enrich themselves from the illegal drug and arms trade using whale-distance intermediaries. An estimated $280 billion in flight capital and drug money.
The Society of Jesus, otherwise known as the Jesuits, were established by Ignatius of Loyola under the Vatican through the Papal Bull Military Regiment of the Church in 1540. The Jesuits were established under the ruling house of Farnese, a powerful black nobility family. The black nobility, otherwise known as the black aristocracy, are powerful families connected to the Vatican, whose ancestors were popes and Jesuits. Their roots can be traced back to the Venetian oligarchs of Khazar and married into the royal houses in the early part of the 12th century. Following a great Khazar victory over the Arabs, the future emperor Constantine V married a Khazar princess, and their son became Emperor Leo IV, also known as Leo the Khazar. The black nobility established the Committee of 300 in the early 18th century, but did not take on its present form until 1897, when the China opium trade was legalized. The Committee of 300 oversees many powerful organizations in the world, and one of them is the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome is a conspiratorial umbrella organization, a marriage between Anglo-American bankers and the old black nobility families of Europe, particularly from London, Venice, and Genoa. The key to the successful control of the world is their ability to create and manage savage economic recessions and eventual depressions. These noble families are behind the globalist so-called pro-environmentalist agendas, which are actually intended to curb population growth. It is no secret when you look around and see what is going on and the agendas that they have been pushing for decades. These families ardently desire to return to a feudal system where they are in complete control and will once again become the absolute rulers. Karl Mayer von Rothschild, who was born under the House of Two Sicilies, started the Rothschild Banking of Naples and has lent over $5 million to the Vatican starting in 1832. Since then, the Rothschilds have been the fiscal agents of the Vatican. The Rothschild-Vatican cabal unsuccessfully took over American banks during the Revolutionary War and the 1812 War. This is all due to the protection of the Constitution. But the Rothschild-Vatican cabal succeeded with the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913. The House of Farnese, who ruled when the Jesuits were established, built a pentagonal mansion in Caprarola, Italy, which was the architectural basis for the United States Pentagon. The Jesuits' headquarters, the JESUIT Church, has this engraved on the top of their church. This is the Latin variant of Farnese. The House of Farnese dissolved in 1766, but assimilated into the House of Bourbon Two Sicilies through the marriage of Elizabeth Farnese and the House of Bourbon, King Philip V of Spain. Something that few people know about the Jesuits is that they were expelled over and over again from almost every Catholic European country in the 1700s. Charles III expelled the Jesuits from all Spanish-controlled territories in 1767 because he felt they had acquired too much power, wealth, and influence. However, no matter how many times the Jesuits were expelled, they always found a way back in to renew their work after the chaos they created subsided. And it is this fact that is the proof that there is something morally wrong with the Jesuits. In 1916, Senator Robert Owen stated, "The United States is the prime target to which the Vatican directs the subversive and destructive activities of the Jesuits." The native Canadian tribe known as the Huron claimed that the Jesuits were sorcerers who were casting spells on them from their books, suspecting them of black magic. Jesuits were also accused of creating outbreaks of diseases within indigenous communities, killing thousands. Sounds like exactly what Bill Gates has done and is doing. Consequently, the natives believed that the Jesuits had been sent to their homeland to murder them. There are countless stories like this, which is why this group was expelled from so many countries and territories. Jesuit training lasts anywhere from 8 to 14 years, and by the time the priests are thrown back out into the world, they are highly brainwashed. The Jesuit Rule 13 reads, "That we may be altogether of the same mind and conformity." In other words, do not think for yourself and follow blindly. Historian R. Healy stated, "The Jesuits are so extreme in their submission, they become like machines. Their determination to achieve their goals drew on powers unavailable to other men through black magic. If Jesuits speak about the works of the Jesuits, they will find themselves assassinated." I think it is fair to say that the Jesuits are actually victims of brainwashing and mind control. The Jesuits are the world's Manchurian candidates, which in my mind makes them one of the most misunderstood groups in the world. They are evil, no doubt, but they are also victims of the globalist control. According to Kathy O'Brien and Bryce Taylor, who are Project Monarch whistleblowers, said that the Jesuits are high-level intelligence agents that work under the Black Nobility and Vatican. Jesuits specialize in infiltrating all aspects of society through lying and gaslighting, which makes them more dangerous, desperate, and ruthless. Jesuits infiltrate lies into society through their worldwide universities and top-level infiltration of the U.S. government, military, media, banking, and businesses. After all, the definition of the word Jesuit is one given to intrigue or equivocation. Equivocation means the use of ambiguous language to hide the truth. According to the book Vatican Assassins by Eric John Phelps, the man responsible for ordering assassinations, terror attacks, and wars in the underworld is none other than the Black Pope, the unofficial name for the superior general of the Jesuits, the leader. It has been written that they call him the Black Pope as a tribute to their use of black magic. Black magic was used by the Great White Brotherhood. The Great White Brotherhood is a racist cult in Greenland. According to the book Sex, Cults, and Alternative Religions by David Barrett, he writes that the Great White Brotherhood are a cult of supernatural beings of great power who have risen from the earth into immortality and watch over the world. The members of this group go by many names: Ascended Masters, Council of Light, the Esoteric Order. These people are spiritually enlightened who lived past incarnations as ordinary humans but have undergone a series of rituals. Some may call them the Fallen Ones, the Reptilians, the Anunnaki, the Shapeshifters. The list goes on. It has been written that there are two Great White Brotherhoods that control everything in the world, one in Greenland and one in Switzerland. The island of Greenland is officially owned by Denmark, referred to as Greenland of Denmark, which becomes the acronym for God. And we know Switzerland is a banking empire and home to the World Economic Forum, which is held every year in Davos, Switzerland. Kind of makes you wonder why Trump was so obsessed with purchasing Greenland. The World Economic Forum was founded by Klaus Schwab, a German engineer and economist. When you Google Klaus Schwab books, you get 7, dating back to 2002. He has written about reshaping Asia, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the Great Reset. And by now you have probably seen his creepy videos discussing food shortages, more lockdowns, the Great Reset, and granted amenities for those who receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Klaus Schwab is one of the puppets for the black nobility. I won't go into the details of the Davos Manifesto of 2020. It is online for anyone to read, but it basically states that there is a conflict over the future of capitalism, and there is a conflict over the future of technology. And this all ties into social media companies, censorship, 5G, and artificial intelligence. Greta Thunberg spoke at the World Economic Forum when she was 17, and she did not get there by accident. The Jesuits are managed by the Black Pope, who is currently Arturo Sosa. The Black Pope is managed by the Vatican, and if you want to know who manages the Vatican, look no further than Prince Carlo, Duke of Castro, the head of the House of Bourbon, Two Sicilies, a House of Farnese descendant. Prince Carlo, Duke of Castro, took over the House of Bourbon, Two Sicilies in 2008 when his father, Prince Ferdinand, Duke of Castro, died. Prince Carlo is a descendant from Prince Rainier, the former head of the House of Bourbon, Two Sicilies. The surname Rainier turned into Rainier, a different spelling, when the descendants came to America. Keith Rainier, who shares the same name, was just indicted for his sex crimes against humanity as the leader of NXIVM. Prince Carlo's role as the head of House of Bourbon makes him superior over the Sacred Military Constantinian Order of St. George and the Royal Order of Francis I. Without getting into all of the confusing details of this royal knighthood, I will explain this as simply as possible. Let's go over these two groups. The first group, the Sacred Military Constantinian Order of St. George, is a non-governmental organization that was established in 1718 as the sole international Catholic order alongside the Knights of Malta. In modern history, this royal order is responsible for choosing 100 to 150 people to hold consultation positions at the Economic and Social Council at the United Nations, otherwise known as ECOSOC. The current president of ECOSOC is Munir Akram, who is also the permanent ambassador and representative of Pakistan to the United Nations in New York. In 2003, Akram's live-in girlfriend called the police numerous times for domestic violence, and all cases were dropped by then-Mayor Michael Bloomberg. ECOSOC is currently working on two things that stuck out to me. One, promoting sustainable development and promoting Agenda 2030, and two, their work in Haiti. The Knights of Malta, who work alongside the Sacred Military, oversee international law that governs the Vatican, otherwise known as the Holy See, and has a permanent observer status at the United Nations. All members of the Sacred Military and the Knights of Malta must be descendants of the black nobility. Prince Carlo is married to Camilla Crociani. Camilla is the daughter of Eddie Vessel, a famous Italian actress. Their wedding was dubbed the Blue Blood Wedding of the Decade. Camilla claimed that her mother would not allow her to marry the love of her life, French entrepreneur Nicolas Delroux, and was arranged to marry Prince Carlo. Camilla is a Dame Master of the Knights of Malta and is an honorary citizen of London. Let's take a look at her Instagram. Why is she hanging out with Buzz Aldrin? And here she is with psychopath de Blasio. Why would one of the most powerful women in Italy post a tribute photo to Kobe Bryant and his daughter? Here she is with Bill Gates. And she follows Greta Thunberg. Now that we understand the Sacred Military, let's learn about the second group Prince Carlo oversees, the Royal Order of Francis I. This royal order was founded in 1829 as a merit award to members of the black nobility for their public service. The Royal Order of Francis I is the equivalent of the Order of the Golden Fleece of Spain. John F. Kennedy and Jackie were married in 1953 and honeymooned in Acapulco, Mexico, and they stayed at the Mexican president's villa. It was at this villa where Jackie wrote this poem. He would find love he would never find peace, for he must go seeking the golden fleece. What an ominous poem to write about your husband. What was Jackie talking about? Who was the golden fleece? In Greek mythology, the golden fleece was the skin of Zeus's holy ram. The two children of King Athamas, Phrixus and Hel, were condemned to be sacrificed by the orders of their stepmother. Zeus, who saw this as an injustice, released his holy ram to save them. The holy ram flew down and took the children away and continued to travel a long distance with the children. Unfortunately, during the flight, Hel fell from the ram's grip and plummeted into the ocean to his untimely death. The area of the ocean where Hel fell is known today as Hellespontine and was named after this famous Greek story. This small region of what is now modern-day Turkey is where JFK Jr. and his wife Carolyn honeymooned, and just like Hel, JFK Jr. fell from flight into the ocean to his untimely death. Very strange parallel. When I researched who was the Knight of the Golden Fleece during JFK's presidency, it was Robert Hugo, the Duke of Parma, the head of the House of Bourbon. Robert Hugo was the ruler of the Jesuits and the Vatican. Perhaps this is who Jackie referred to in her poem. And after all, it was the Club of Rome that played a huge role in the Cuban Missile Crisis and tried selling crisis management under FEMA to President Kennedy. Tavistock agents approached the president trying to explain how crucial the program was to be implemented, but Kennedy rejected it. That same year, Kennedy was murdered. Everyone has an opinion on how and why Kennedy died, but I believe it goes all the way back to the black nobility. There are other connections we can make to the House of Bourbon. Juan Carlos of Spain is a descendant of the House of Bourbon and reigned as the Spanish king until 2014. He oversaw the Mexican Gulf drug cartel and spent Thanksgiving with George W. Bush in 2004 at his 1,500-acre ranch home in Texas. Why was George W. Bush entertaining a black nobility king? I found an article about 300,000 babies who were taken from hospitals in Spain between the 1930s and 1990s under the governance of the House of Bourbon. Some protesters said it was human trafficking. Others say it was eugenics. Either way, it's a horrendous story. But when you hear about all these missing children of the world, and there are no answers to where they go, it makes you suspect they are being trafficked, sexualized, murdered, and cannibalized for these sick and vicious psychopaths. And if you believe the testimony of Arizona Wilder, she claimed that reptilians are responsible for kidnapping children, terrorizing them for their blood to maintain their immortality. And it has been written that this is what the ascended masters of the Great White Brotherhood do. So now we know that Prince Carlo oversees the Vatican, who oversees the United Nations and the Jesuits. Here is Pope Francis doing the Masonic hand sign of the Master of the Second Veil. Freemasonry is both an organization and type of sorcery, just like the Jesuits with their black magic practices. And Jesuits are also Masonic. If you are wondering how the Jesuits have infiltrated the Catholic Church, just look at the rituals done inside a Catholic church. Breaking the bread and eating it is a symbol of cannibalism, eating the flesh. Drinking red wine is a symbolism for drinking blood. On Ash Wednesday, the Catholics put the black cross over the pineal gland. Not to mention, they all look like druids in their robes. Now let's get into the Jesuits of the United States. Of course, it is conspiracy to say that there are Jesuit agents running amok in the United States. But I would like to point out there is an overwhelming amount of Jesuit-educated people running the biggest companies, banks, and political positions in our country. World Bank Group, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of England, and the European Central Bank are all run by Jesuit-educated people. In the past, Jesuits have run the IRS and NASA. Jesuit-educated CIA directors include Robert Gates, George Tenet, Leon Panetta, Michael Morrell, David Petraeus, and John Brennan. Former CIA Director James Clapper was a professor at Jesuit Georgetown University. Georgetown is the oldest Jesuit college in America and holds the Jesuit traditions while being extremely selective in who they choose to enroll. They take pride in the fact that many of their graduates go on to be leaders of the world stage. I would also like to point out that 8 out of the 9 justices that sit on the Supreme Court were all Jesuit educated and members of the Jesuit fraternity Phi Beta Kappa. Stephen Breyer married into black nobility and is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Amy Coney Barrett's father was a lifelong lawyer for the Rothschild Shell Oil Company. Perhaps it means nothing, but I thought it was interesting. Joe Biden has 2 Jesuit honorary degrees, and Hunter Biden attended Georgetown and served as a Jesuit volunteer after he graduated. He then went on to sit on the board of Amtrak, appointed by George W. Bush. Here are some other Jesuit-educated people you may recognize. The Trumps, Bill Clinton, the Podesta brothers, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Paul Manafort, John Kelly, King Abdullah, King Philip IV of Spain, Crown Prince Pavlos of Greece, the Prince of Luxembourg, Pierre and Justin Trudeau, John Kerry, Anthony Fauci, Gavin Newsom, the Cuomo brothers, Mike Madigan, and James Walton of the Walmart dynasty. And most all of them graduated from Georgetown. If we go back in history, let's look at some others. Joseph Goebbels, the head of Nazi propaganda, was Jesuit educated. Joseph Stalin was trained by Jesuit monks. Fidel Castro, Lyndon Johnson, Prescott Bush, and Brzezinski, the psychopath who warned us about the technocrat society. Mark Dybul, the global AIDS coordinator who worked closely with Fauci. And I would also like to point out that there were 36 people in the George W. Bush administration that were Jesuit educated who handled the aftermath of 9/11. In pop culture, we have Alfred Hitchcock, Denzel Washington, Bill Murray, George Norrie, and Timothy Leary. It just seems like a strange coincidence that most everyone we see on the world stage has this one thing in common. They are Jesuit educated. Maybe it means nothing, and maybe it means everything. I would also like to point out that most of the mainstream media are run by Jesuits. Time Warner, Walt Disney, Viacom, CBS, NBC, Clear Channel, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and Reuters. When we talk about the world stage, it is important to note that there are many organizations working together that have the same goals and agendas, and this interconnected community controls all the world's money. These organizations are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the Committee of 300, the Bilderbergers, Tavistock, La Cosa Nostra, the Spiritans, Skull and Bones, the Nazi fascists, the Zionists, Freemasons, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, the Shriners, the Boule, the Five Percenters, the Hellfire Club, Scientology, the Luciferians, the Knights Templar, the Hermetic Order, the Kabbalist Jews, Knights of Columbus, and the Knights of Pythias, which is the CIA of Switzerland. The Knights of Pythias was established in 1864 and is a secret society of Washington, D.C. They were named after the Greek myth of Damon and Pythias, which is symbolic for treason. This group is completely controlled by the CIA, and any of their actions by members can easily be blamed on the U.S. government. Some members are Chuck Schumer, Anthony Weiner, Robert Byrd, and Nelson Rockefeller. And there is a secret society that goes one step deeper, and that is the Imperial Cult of Rome. The Imperial Cult of Rome was the first secret society and the true power behind the Roman Empire. This cult was so top secret and highly classified that even the Roman Senate, government officials, and the general public were completely in the dark about who was actually in charge. The cult claimed divine authority to rule through descendants from the lineage of man, birthed by Minos the Crete, the founder of the Roman Empire. Minos was raised by King Asterion, which translates to ruler of the stars. Minos, painted by Michelangelo in the Last Judgment painting, can be found at the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, where he is depicted as the devil. And it's been written that Minos spawned the master race, popularized by Nazi Germany, and currently occupies Switzerland and Greenland as the Great White Brotherhood. In the book, The People of the Secret states there is a hidden directorate influencing, guiding, and intervening in humanity's destiny over the centuries. The Great White Brotherhood claims to have been present in all secret societies and ages, and have been in power since the fall of the Roman Empire on Earth. The Great White Brotherhood refers to themselves as man, while other people refer to themselves as human. The term hue means property of color. These men have white skin, red hair, and blue or green eyes. In other words, they have the look of the Irish, hence the idiom, luck of the Irish. The color black consonantly equates to Belak or 13 lac, a reference to the 13 bloodlines of the Rome Illuminati, which lack black or African blood, hence the term the Great White Brotherhood.
So much confusion surrounds the legend of the Knights Templar. As with everything, there is an official story, there is a true story, and there is an untold story. The official story is what they want everyone to believe. The quote, true story is the version put out there to make those in search of the truth think that they found the truth and stop there. The true story is purposefully controversial or sinister sometimes to make it that much harder to resist. The untold story is the one that's actually based on reality, but the problem is that it seems so far removed from both the official story and the true story that it ends up going nowhere. That's why it's the untold story. It's like a piece to the puzzle that no one has a clue what to do with because they don't even realize that it's a piece to the puzzle to begin with. That's how the real truth can be hidden in plain sight. This will be my third video on the Baphomet, and this one involves the Knights Templar. Among the many criminal charges that King Philip IV brought against the Templars were heresy and idolatry. They were accused of worshiping something called the Baphomet. Today we hear that name and we think of a horned, goat-headed hermaphrodite. If asked who it is, most Christians would probably say the devil. And they're right, in a way. The problem is that they have in their minds the image of a devil that's completely false and misleading. But that's all part of the plan, because the real devil, the real enemy of man and the Most High God, looks nothing like the image of the Baphomet we've been given. But as long as you don't know that, as long as you think Satan looks like this big hairy hermaphrodite, you'll never see the real enemy for who she is, or who she claims to be even. Before I move on, I would like to invite you to watch my previous two videos on the topic of Baphomet. The first one gets into the biblical symbolism found in the Baphomet image. The second video uncovers some of the ways the ideology behind the Baphomet manifests in society and in the entertainment industry. Briefly touching on some of those things that I've discussed in those previous two videos that I mentioned, before discussing the Knights Templar connection. Deuteronomy 4, chapter 4, verse 15 through 19 gives us a clue of what the Baphomet embodies, and it is the amalgamation of everything that the Most High God has warned us against worshiping, on earth and in the heaven above. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves, and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters, beneath the earth, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the hosts of heaven, should be driven to worship them and serve them. And as you see in the Baphomet, you have the wings of a fowl, the head of a goat, which is a beast of the earth, and down there in the groin area you have the caduceus staff, which is a symbol of medicine. And also you will notice that this staff is an artificial member of this person's body. So while I guess opposite of that you have natural female breasts, you have down below that the unnatural male phallus. And also the staff is a symbol of power. The scepter or the staff is the symbol of authority, and it is a phallic symbol, and phallic symbols are typically symbols of authority. So whether that phallus is even real and true and belonging to this Baphomet, who knows. So beyond that, you have, right behind that caduceus rod or staff there, you have the scales of a fish. And up above the right hand you have this white crescent moon, which could represent represent the sun. And opposite of that, down below, you have the dark side, which is the it's definitely the moon in this case, opposite of the sun. And this whole thing is about alchemy. So we have, on this next picture, we have the Kabbalah tree of life next to the Baphomet, and I'm showing here how the right side of the Kabbalah tree of life is the masculine side. In the left side, the blue, is the feminine. So the red is the masculine and the blue is the feminine. And also you will notice that the red is the color of the Republican Party, and the blue is the color of the Democratic Party. And you have a male Republican running for president now, and a female Democrat running for president right now. And in between that, the middle path is the synthesis. That is the what people will call the happy medium, or the compromise between the two, or the fusion, the harmony between both sides. That is also part of alchemy. So the right hand path, which is on the masculine side, is, I guess you could say, it's the uses of benevolent methods, the white magic, right? And on the left hand path, you have, on the left side there, on the feminine side, the blue side, is what you have what's called black magic. And this involves killing the conscience, or the cremation of care, and it adopts the breaking of taboo and the abandoning of set morality. At its roots, the left hand path is the feminine path. So Eliphaz Levi, which is not really his real name, but Eliphaz Levi is the person who drew this Baphomet image. From Wikipedia, Eliphaz Levi, born Alphonse Louis Constant, February 8, 1810, and died May 31st, 1875, was a French occult author and ceremonial magician. Eliphaz Levi, the name under which he published his book, was his attempt to translate or transliterate his given names, Alphonse Louis, into the Hebrew language. This is a note from me. Eliphaz did claim that his drawing was of the Baphomet of the Knights Templar, but in my opinion, since Eliphaz Levi was not born until 1810, which is almost 500 years after the Knights Templar were dissolved, his drawing of Baphomet is very unlikely to have anything to do with the real Baphomet, or Sophia, that the Templar were accused of worshipping. From Hermetic.com, in the eyes of the Western world, Eliphaz Levi's illustrations of Baphomet is a representation of the Christian devil, the source of all evil, The French occultist illustration from his magnum opus, Transcendental Magic, shows a winged, goat-headed creature, a pentagram on his forehead, surrounded by occult symbols, all iconography associated with the devil. A pitchfork and a barbed tail are all that would be needed to complete the stereotype. So this is that stereotypical image of the devil that we receive. But as I mentioned earlier, that is a false image given to us. From TemplarHistory.com, somewhere between the years of AD 1118 through 1120, King Baldwin II granted the group quarters in a wing of the royal palace on the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It has been generally accepted that for the first 9 years of their existence, the Templars, as they came to be known, consisted of 9 members. In 1310, the Templars were officially dissolved by Pope Clement V at the Council of Vienna. I think that's Vienna. Although the Templars were not found guilty of the crimes they were charged with, idolatry being one, it was felt that the reputation of the order had fallen to so low a state as to warrant dissolving the order. On March 18th, 1314, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake for having recanted his earlier confessions of guilt. The Baphomet mythos. Central to the accusations brought against the Knights Templar was that they worshipped an idol, said to have taken the form of a head or sometimes a black cat. Although the popular mythology related to the Templars gives this idol the name of Baphomet, the fact remains that in all the testimonies against the Templars, the term Baphomet was used but twice. From northernway.org, Templarism is a form of esoteric Christianity. Perhaps one could call it underground Christianity. Sometimes Templarism is inaccurately called Gnosticism, later called downright heresy by the Church. As well we know, secret codes and ciphers were used to conceal certain of their most dangerous doctrines, such as the existence of a co-creator, a goddess partnered with God the Father. This is a note from me. I believe it is very accurate to call Templarism Gnosticism. As you will see, they have a lot in common. The great goddess Sophia was this being, and it was she who incarnated as Mother Mary, and perhaps Mary Magdalene, though it is unclear since both Mary and Mary Magdalene lived at the same time. Some theories are that the Shekinah was Mother Mary and Sophia was Mary Magdalene. Surely it is not mere coincidence that both women bore the same name. Miriam later derived into Mary its Greek form. From northernway.org again, the Atbash cipher proved that Baphomet was a code word, a cipher for the name Sophia. You can also see this on TemplarHistory.com. You will see that the Atbash cipher, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, says Baphomet one way, and reversed it results in Sophia. So from The Goddess, the Grail, and the Lodge by Alan Butler, page 221 through 223, there are clues as to the true nature of the beliefs that the highest members of the Knights Templar espoused, into which initiates proved worthy and capable were gradually brought. These existed from the very start of the institution and were part of the original rules of the order. They had been drawn up by Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. The Templars never lost faith in Bernard. It is said that during his long captivity, Jacques de Molay composed a prayer to and concerning Saint Bernard. Bernard had remained the single most important individual to Templarism for nearly 200 years. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, presumably with the full sanction and agreement of the original Templar Knights, had dedicated the knightly order unequivocally to the Virgin Mary. All its endeavors were undertaken in her name, and it was this name that they cried as they went into battle. The Templars were, from the beginning to end, a Marianist brotherhood. Bearing in mind Saint Bernard's own reverence for Mary, or whatever she actually represented in his mind and heart, it is likely that the original Templars, and perhaps the whole order for 200 years, maintained a common belief with Bernard. Source: America, Nation of the Goddess, The Venus Families and the Founding of the United States by Alan Butler and Janet Walter, page 96. Bernard's adoration of the Virgin Mary knew no bounds, and it all started with a most unusual encounter when he was a young priest. According to his own words, Bernard had been praying before a statue of the Virgin when she lifted her hand to her breast. Drops of milk then fell from her breast into Bernard's open mouth. And there are images of this event that you can find if you search for Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. If you search for his name, they will pop up. You don't have to search milk squirting or anything. From that moment on, he committed himself exclusively to the Virgin Mary, and it was something he passed on. Although historians often point to the veneration the Knights Templar had for John the Baptist, in reality, their patron was always the Virgin Mary. Almost all Cistercian abbeys were named for her, as were many, if not most, Templar churches. Back to the goddess, the grill, and the lodge again. The bearded head mentioned in the original charges is interesting, and it may represent the vestiges of a much earlier and essentially pagan belief. The Celts, in particular, had a cult of the severed head. Examples of sculpted stones can be found all over the Celtic world. This head may also have related John the Baptist, for whom the Templars had a special reverence. But of course, that's the official story. Even more likely is the suggestion that the bearded head could have represented the Green Man. Effigies of the Green Man are to be seen in many Gothic churches and cathedrals. Generally speaking, the Green Man is simply a face. He is usually depicted as being composed of branches and leaves, and quite often has tendrils of plants emanating from his mouth and nostrils. Few historians now doubt that the Green Man is a hangover from the days of nature worship, and in particular, worship of the goddess. Here's a note from me. The Green Man is also named Cernunnos. This is Apollyon in your Bible. Of special interest is the name that Philip's representative said the Templars attributed to this head, namely Baphomet. The word Baphomet has a very special meaning. As early as 500 BC, Hebrew writers and scholars had begun to use a code which has come to be known as the Atbash cipher. A full realization of the importance of the Atbash cipher only came to light with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Essene in particular used this method of hiding specific truths. The Atbash cipher is a fairly simple substitution cipher. It was the highly respected New Testament scholar Dr. Hugh Schonfield who realized exactly what Baphomet meant when the Atbash cipher was applied to it. In all probability, the name Baphomet had nothing to do with the mysterious bearded head of the Templars, and the confusion may have been due to the ineptitude on the part of Philip IV's interrogators. A reminder, the Templars were accused of idolatry, and King Philip IV had interrogators to get them to confess of their crimes, their alleged crimes. However, the word was still of tremendous importance to the Templars because once it has gone through the mill of the At-Bas cipher, Baphomet comes out as Sophia. The Templars were dedicated to the Virgin Mary, for whom they showed what amounted to an obsession. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux had deliberately manipulated the Catholic Church of his day to virtually deify Mary. The Templar order was accused of worshipping Baphomet, which we know is a code word and which really means Sophia. Sophia in turn is often represented as a dove. The dove has represented the goddess for thousands of years. It seems more and more likely that the true religious imperatives of the Templars meant that, in 14th century Christian terms, they were guilty as charged.
Something that I find very troubling as a chaplain of the order and as a canon lawyer also, because this essentially is a Vatican takeover of the Order of Malta. By appointing a delegate, the Pope is now saying that he's in charge of the Order of Malta, and its sovereignty in effect disappears, because sovereignty means we decide for ourselves how we structure our government ruling structure and class, and in this case a Grand Master and the Sovereign Council. A Grand Master is now gone, or will be gone if his resignation is accepted, and the Sovereign Council is told that they're going to have an outsider becoming the ruler of the order. I'm very troubled by that.
Pope Francis has really in an unprecedented way forced the resignation of the head of one of the Catholic Church's most ancient institutions, as you mentioned, the Knights of Malta, around since the 11th century, involved in charity work throughout the world. And what's more, and what's at the heart of this story, is they are a sovereign order. That means they're like their own country. They have passports, they have diplomatic relations with other countries, including the Vatican, and they contest the legality of the Pope's intervention in their order. What happened, Becky, was back in December, the Grand Master of the Order, an Englishman named Matthew Festing, fired one of his top officials for allegedly allowing the distribution of condoms in Myanmar through one of their charitable agencies. That official appealed the decision to the Pope. The Pope said he didn't want the official fired and he was going to investigate. But the conservative leadership of the Knights of Malta publicly defied the Pope and said they would not cooperate with the investigation because they are a sovereign order and they questioned the Pope's jurisdiction over them. But the Vatican pressed ahead anyway, and the result is the news we have today that the Pope asked for and received the resignation of the Grand Master. It's less a story about the distribution of the condoms, Becky, as much as the hardline removal of the official allegedly involved, and obviously of the open defiance on the part of the conservative leadership of the Knights of Malta against their progressive Pope.
And after weeks of very public tensions with the Vatican, the head of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta accepted the Holy Father's request that he submit his resignation. The Vatican said today that Pope Francis accepted the resignation of the order's Grand Master, Fra Matthew Festing. His resignation comes after a commission was set up to investigate the removal of the order's Grand Chancellor. The Order of Malta is the present-day continuation of the medieval Knights Hospitaller, founded in the 10th century to provide medical care for pilgrims to the Holy Land. The Grand Master is elected for life from among the professed knights.
And at the Vatican, Pope Francis asked for and received the resignation of leader of the Knights of Malta, Grand Master Fra Matthew Festing. The Catholic lay order became subject to a papal investigation after it fired one of its leaders. Festing had refused to cooperate with a papal commission investigating the ouster of the former Grand Chancellor over revelations that the Knights' charity had distributed condoms during his watch. The Vatican intervention is extraordinary, as Malta is a sovereign order which runs a vast charity network around the globe. After meeting with the Pope on Tuesday, Festing decided to resign. Complicating the situation, the Vatican announced that they were appointing a papal delegate to the order. Here to shed light on this situation and what it all means is a member of the papal posse and chaplain to the Knights of Malta, Father Jerry Murray. Father, thank you for being with us.
Good to be with you, Raymond.
Father, does the Pope have the right to accept the resignation of the Grand Master of Malta and pressure him to resign?
Well, strictly speaking, the Pope does not have the legal authority to accept the resignation of the Grand Master because he neither appointed nor approved the election of the Grand Master. The Grand Master was elected by the Sovereign Council of the Order of Malta, because Malta, the Order of Malta, is a sovereign entity. So unlike any other religious order, it has its own juridical existence apart from the Holy See's oversight. It's a unique institution in the history of the Church, and the sovereignty has been a question that's been debated over the centuries. But strictly speaking, the Pope, he can ask the Grand Master to resign. Pope can ask any Catholic to do things the Pope thinks he should do. But strictly speaking, the resignation is offered to the Sovereign Council, and the Sovereign Council will then accept it.
Some are suggesting, Father Jerry, that this is really about the cardinal patron of Malta, Cardinal Raymond Burke, who's been in a public debate with the Pope over teaching regarding divorced and remarried Catholics receiving communion. Do you think there's any truth to that? And what does this tell us about the Pope's concern for a charitable order distributing condoms abroad?
Well, Cardinal Burke's role, he does not run the Order of Malta. He is the cardinal patron, which means he's the Pope's representative to the order, to be a point of contact and to help guide them in religious matters. As far as I can see, the problem here has been between what the Grand Master did in firing the number 3 in the order, because he was responsible for a program of aid in the Far East that included immoral activities, the giving condoms and other contraceptive means under the aegis of the Order of Malta's charitable action. And the Grand Master was not happy about that. There was an investigation done. It wasn't a matter of an overnight decision on his part. And once that information was presented to the Grand Master by those who investigated it, he felt that he had to take this step. Now, the Holy See, through Cardinal Parolin, expressed displeasure with this action, and then the Pope established a commission that was going to investigate what happened, and the order said no. We're sovereign. This is a matter of governance. This is a matter of our independent existence as a sovereign entity. We control how we monitor and supervise those who work in our organization. And it's kind of stunning because that committee was formed and their work hasn't been completed, even though the Grand Magistracy, the Grand Master, and the Sovereign Council said they wouldn't cooperate with it. The committee went ahead and started its work. And even before that's done, the Pope asked for his resignation. So it's something that I find very troubling as a chaplain of the order and as a canon lawyer also, because this essentially is a Vatican takeover of the Order of Malta. By appointing a delegate, the Pope is now saying that he's in charge of the Order of Malta, and its sovereignty, in effect, disappears, because sovereignty means we decide for ourselves how we structure our government ruling structure and class, and in this case, a Grand Master and a Sovereign Council. A Grand Master is now gone, or will be gone if his resignation is accepted, and the Sovereign Council is told that they're going to have an outsider becoming the ruler of the order. I'm very troubled by that.
Very good. Father Jerry Murray, we'll see how this story develops in the days ahead.
Io vi parlo come fratello. Grazie al Signore perché ci unisca tutti. E avanti, siamo fratelli, perché questo è un miracolo, il miracolo dell'unità è incominciato.
I mean, we could have another 8 years of Hillary Clinton and the worst mess that anybody could make out of a nation. You're going to be held seriously to account by God if you don't vote. And you're going to find that out before this broadcast is over. You're going to be guilty of murder. You're going to be guilty of an abomination of God. You're going to be guilty for every baby that's aborted from this election forward.
And you certainly don't need to be Catholic to be inspired by the humility and heart of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, or to embrace his message.
Till we all come in the unity of the faith. Amen. Amen. Amen.
We can also agree on the need to stand up to anti-Catholic bias, to defend religious liberty. America is in many ways divided like it's never been before. And the great religious leaders here tonight give us all an example that we can follow. We're living in a time and age that we never thought possible before. And we've got to come together, not only as a nation, but as a world community.
If there is no more protest, how can there be a Protestant church? Maybe now we're all Catholics again.
You're going to be held seriously to account by God. You're going to be guilty of murder.
We can also agree on the need to stand up to anti-Catholic bias.
Till we all come in the unity of the faith. An abomination of God. Amen.
How can there be a Protestant church?
You're going to be guilty of murder.
Of the Holy Father, Pope Francis.
Protest is over.
It appears that the Jesuit Pope Francis of the Catholic Church is going full communist. He said people should not own property. Does that sound like a great reset to you? This is on Humans Are Free by Leo Zagami. Only a few days after Pope Francis pushed for the regeneration of the existing institutions and global governance. He wants a one world global power because we are in debt to nature itself, he says, as well as the people and countries affected by human-induced ecological degradation and biodiversity loss, according to him. So here we go again with more leftist propaganda for the great anti-Christian reset by the Jesuit Pope. Pope Francis left the Vatican yesterday morning to celebrate Mass in the nearby Church of the Holy Spirit in Sassia, in the center of Rome, where a group of prisoners and inmates were also present at the celebration, as well as some so-called refugees from the Middle East. So this was the ideal stage for the communist globalist stunt by the communist Pope. During the Mass, Pope Francis commented on Acts 4:32 that says all the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had, he said. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. Now, as he was saying all this, his congregation was rather puzzled at what he was stating concerning shared ownership. It's not communism, but it is pure Christianity, Pope Francis said. The Pope obviously stated that this was not for the love of the Gospels or Jesus Christ's way of life, but in preparation for the infamous Great Reset announced last year by the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, who founded the World Economic Forum in 1971. The projections of WEF's Global Future Council state that people would have to rent and borrow their necessities from the state, which would be the sole proprietor of all goods and services. So that is full communism, isn't it? The supply of goods would be rationed in line with the social credit point system. In other words, if the state believed that you were not in line with what they were wanting you to be, then you wouldn't get what you were supposed to in order to live. Now, shopping in the traditional sense would disappear along with the private purchases of goods. Every personal move would be tracked electronically, and all production would be subject to the requirements of clean energy and a sustainable environment, and that is what Pope Francis and the Catholic Church are promoting today. They seem to be more into telling people how to live economically and financially instead of caring for the salvation of souls and the conversion of those who don't believe. Anyway, going back to this, in the nightmarish new world that the Pope and the New World Order are setting up for us, there would be no private ownership of houses, nor would anyone pay rent because someone else would be using our free space whenever we do not need it. A person's living room, for example, might be used for business meetings when one is absent, but in exchange you would have free access for transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. But remember, you will own nothing. So what to do? The Old Testament, New Testament have to say about private property. As it turns out, they say quite a lot. The Bible upholds the importance of owning and being able to use private property, and even, bequeathing your property to your future generations. Now, it's especially wrong to steal or to covet someone else's property. It's one of the 10 original commandments. Strictly speaking, all property is owned by the Lord. Moreover, the controversial passage in Acts 4:32 does not constitute an exception to this, as the early believers retained private property while being generous with their possessions. In other words, giving alms, giving to charity, being charitable. Because God, doesn't force anyone to do something. In this case here, it's a forced system. Now, they voluntarily shared what they had through their, what seemed to have been a temporary arrangement, not a permanent one, like the Pope and his Davos friends are trying to impose on the whole world, because the Bible's central principles are consistent with a market economy, commonly called capitalism. Furthermore, the Bible's central principles also contradict a centrally planned economy, often referred to as socialism. Capitalism is an economic system that largely allows markets to allocate scarce resources through prices, property rights, and profit and loss signals. Socialism is a system under which the government owns the means of production. The government uses coercive taxation and wealth distribution to allocate resources. The government also makes decisions over property, prices, and production. Incidentally, communism is a progressive form from socialism. It's both a political and economic system that would abolish private property and give to individuals based on need, just like Pope Francis and the WEF want. Now, we know communism has failed in Russia. I have been to St. Petersburg after the fall of the Russian system. I went there about 10 years later, and it was terrible what we were being told by the people who lived there. Just terrible. Now, such a project is anti-Christian and in line with the coming age of the Antichrist. So please leave your comments about this, and thank you for your support. This is on Humans Are Free.